All right, let's get more by Natasha Mazzoni. She's the Democratic Alliance's Chief Whip. Natasha, thanks for your time. We appreciate it. So we got a little bit of what you have to say about the new National Assembly Speaker in that story. But let's talk a bit more about it. First, I want to talk about why you think this is not the right choice.
Well, I think Lindsay summed it up very well in her introduction. The fact of the matter is we now have a speaker who one of her first duties will be to do an investigation into herself. So there's a classic case of conflict of interest. So it would only be right for her to be suspended while the investigation into her is ongoing, and for the Deputy Speaker to carry on as acting Speaker until such time as the investigation is over. There are other issues that have to be discussed by parliamentary committees, including the Jetgate scandal, in which various ANC ministers were given a little free ride to Zimbabwe alongside the minister. There's the issue of whether or not a Burundian woman was human trafficked who was in a relationship with her son. There are so many controversies that it's almost impossible to fathom that we now sit in Parliament with someone facing so many charges and someone who has come under such scrutiny and someone whose ethics are so questionable now leads the Parliament of South Africa. And I think what was most telling was one of her first actions as Speaker of Parliament was to thank ex-President Jacob Zuma.
Wow. So let's talk about accountability and how it is going to be possible with Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula as the National Assembly Speaker. We know that the Joint Committee on Defence is still supposed to be looking into these allegations brought by Bantu Holomisa. Does it in any way impact the independence of that investigation and what we hear afterwards?
Well, I certainly think it does. Forgive me, but I am now completely cynical about things that happen in Parliament. I have gone from being ever the optimist who believes in the glass being half full to now believing that the glass is half empty, because I still cannot fathom how Parliament could possibly have the ex-Minister of Defence who, during her tenure, didn't know that there was a possible coup on its way, who has all of these cases against her. It's in my mind, it's hard to understand. I can't get around the fact that this particular woman is going to lead our Parliament, especially considering the Zondo Commission has given us very strict instructions on how we should be more ethically compliant, how we should be more accountable, and how we should hold people to account. Now, the fact of the matter is the Speaker is in charge of discipline, and the Speaker is in charge of the committees that look after the discipline. And I cannot see how the Speaker can now, without compromising the situation completely, by not removing herself completely from the position of Speaker, for these commissions to be free and fair. There is such a clear conflict of interest, there is no way she can get around it.
Is there any way or grounds then for opposition parties to challenge this in any form, be it legally or within the House?
Well, we're looking at all possible measures in the House. We do know, and we agree with the courts, that Parliament should first exhaust all its own mechanisms available to it before we approach the courts. And the courts have told us this many times. One of the problems, though, Shahan, is that all the committees which we could use to challenge these particular issues would be put together or would be chaired or would ultimately be decided on by the Speaker. So again, we sit with a conflict of interest. And that's why I say that for even this 5 million scandal that now hangs over her head and hangs over like shame over our Parliament, she would have to be suspended or take special leave of her own accord while the issue is investigated, to make sure that she is not on the property, she is not able to interfere in any way with the investigation, and to give it some kind of legitimacy at all. Because quite frankly, while she holds office, it will not have any legitimacy. So I'm going to be looking, and my staff are going to be looking at ways in which we can hold the Speaker to account for things that she's done. But what you must realize and what we must see is this is simply the most perfectly illustrated example of the ANC's cadre deployment policy in action. A completely inept minister was removed because she could not do her job. And instead of being fired like any other person would be in any other country in the world, has been rewarded with one of the most powerful positions in South Africa.
Yeah. Natasha, many people would argue that the Speaker is, of course, guided by parliamentary rules. Is that enough, though? Or do you think there's just no way you're going to get a fair process going forward?
Shahan, I sit on the Rules Committee and I sit on the Rules Subcommittee, and I'm very proud of the fact that I know the rules like the back of my hand. But I can tell you that the Speaker plays a very, very pivotal role in everything that we do regarding discipline in the House. That's why the Speaker is meant to be neutral and objective, and ideally would not even come from a political party, would resign from a political party to prove neutrality. So I find it very hard to believe that just the rules of Parliament would allow for these investigations to be free and fair. One just has to look at the way the Nkandla Gate scandal was swept under the carpet. Many such investigations, when it was, not in the interests of the ANC, were managed to be swept under the carpet, and that's why Thandi Modise came in and was such a breath of fresh air to Parliament, because there we had the example of a neutral Speaker who absolutely took no sides, was very fair. And when I left Parliament today, I had the pleasure of seeing now Minister Modise, and I said to her, your presence is going to be very missed in the chair, and now more so than ever, because the one thing about Thandi Modise is not only was she brave and she stood up for Parliament, but she would not be told what to do as Speaker. And that's certainly not what I predict will be happening going forward.
All right, we're going to have to wait and see. Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it. That was Natasha Mazzoni, Chief Whip for the Democratic Alliance.